Welcome back, everybody. It is episode 4 discussion time. Not quite halfway through the season. Things are really heating up, you could say. Pun intended. You know how we do it here. We always intend those puns, even when we don't. Welcome back, Sean. What did you think of the episode? We'll just jump right in and give our initial impressions and not worry about too much about the preamble. You guys, if you're watching episode 4 review with us, this is probably not your first History of Westeros experience. So let's not waste any time.
I think that this is a boring episode with nothing to talk about. So
this will be a very short review. We're just going to stop right now.
No, it was awesome.
I
really liked it. I felt like almost every scene was stirring thoughts up in me, and didn't have a lot of silly action. Maybe you could nitpick about the very end there, but I wouldn't even bother. It was
very cerebral, I think. There's a lot of interesting discussions between the characters. It was emotional in ways that were maybe unexpected. And again, despite it being pretty epic, it's still just setting things up for the rest of the season.
There's certain things about it that I'm almost like hesitant. I don't know how much I want to talk about certain things because it can evoke like political discussion.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Philosophical discussion. A lot of stuff, especially with Tyrion and Marine, the stuff going on there.
Even in the behind the episode, the show creators brought up Abraham Lincoln, the real life slavery debate, and how that went down. So yeah, it is. You're right. It is. There's some real world touchiness in here as well as something that we won't touch on, but is going on. A lot of you are aware of this. We'll touch on this in the book to show review. A lot of people are unhappy with. A lot of book readers are unhappy with some of that. So book readers, you'll have to be patient, though. This is a show-only review, of course. We'll discuss all that on Wednesday. We're going to focus on what this means just as a standalone. And that's very important, by the way. Show canon is not book canon. Some things that people were expecting or weren't expecting happened. But hey, the show is its own animal. For better or for worse, that's what it is. We're on line with that. We're fine with that. So we're going to discuss it that way.
In addition to Tyrion, but also in King's Landing, the whole thing with the Sparrow, by the way, this idea of like the common man and the power of the people, and it's sort of like I want to say Spartan, but I don't know if Spartan's quite the idea, but leveling of classes. Like I don't know if the Sparrow necessarily thinks that everyone should live in rags on the streets, but I do think he thinks everyone should live more equally than modestly, they do.
Yeah, right? Wealth is bad to a certain degree. It's bad. Yeah. That's part of society and culture. And I don't know how much the showmakers or Martin in the first place are trying to make social commentary, but it can't help but grow out of this, I think. Yeah, you can't. It's too real. There's too many things that are similar to real world problems because Game of Thrones does a good job, books and show, at capturing the conflict within the human heart and how they deal with that. And that's what this is about more than it is the dragons and the direwolves.
I thought it was about sword fighting.
Well, have I got a surprise for you? No, so there's a lot of that going on in this episode as well. I thought the title is a little interesting. It's called The Book of the Stranger. And it's not as obvious what that means in terms of some of the episode titles are a little more straightforward, like Home, Oathbreaker. Like those are really just like, you kind of know what that means. But The Book of the Stranger is a little more nebulous. It's a little more meta. And I'm not some of the things that I perceived of as themes for this episode, I'm not sure how they line up with The Book of the Stranger as a title, but that doesn't bother me. I'm just curious.
One thing about this title is it might be a little more unique to this world. Right, something like Oathbreaker has meaning outside of Game of Thrones.
That's true,
right? And Home, right? But the Book of the Stranger is a particular god, and I'm kind of guessing the Book of the Stranger might have particular passages,
like the one Marjorie quoted.
Right?
Yeah,
and so you might even have particular insight to meaning of the Book of the Stranger.
Sure.
I don't know if that's even something maybe you've covered elsewhere. I know you've talked about religion a lot.
Right. We never have covered the Seven specifically as a religion. We intended to before, but the World of Ice and Fire came out and everything changed. We haven't gotten back to that. One day maybe we'll get back to that. But yeah, it's one problem is that the faith of the Seven is there's no magic associated with them. We wanted to deal with the more magical religions, the ones that are a little more creepy and less like real religion. Like the Seven is clearly based on, has aspects of, you know, the darker times of, say, Catholicism and the earlier times of Christianity, more Catholicism than anything, but other forms of Christianity, other religions as well. I mean, the religion of R'hllor has some things in common with Zoroastrianism. George is drawn on real world religions for a lot of these things, but of course it makes sense, him being raised in a Catholic family, that Catholicism would be the strongest streak in there. But again, this isn't modern Catholicism it's like medieval Catholicism, which is very judgmental, and especially about things like sexuality. And there's maybe a little bit of a Spanish Inquisition feel going on here. Not nearly as brutal, which is surprising. You think Game of Thrones is going to be more brutal than real life generally, and here we are talking about real world comparisons, just like you said. So some of the other things, the themes of this episode that I thought were interesting, there was a lot of compromise. People having to work with their enemies, people coming together, and there's a bit of a reunion theme as well. Obviously, Jon and Sansa is the big one, but there's also, you know, Littlefinger coming back to see Robert Arryn, and, you know, some other ones as well. Dany and Jorah and Daario are reunited. Dany even going back to Vaes Dothrak? Yeah, Vaes Dothrak. That's sort of a reunion, I guess. You know? Yeah, pretty much. She's like, I've been here before. I know how this all works. I'm gonna get you. Prepare to burn. So we'll start, sort of like the other episodes this season. We begin at the Wall. Unlike the other episodes this season, we do not end at the Wall. Every other episode so far this season has started and ended at the Wall. This episode started at the Wall, finished with fire instead of ice. Kind of cool. A lot of fire, really. Quite a lot of fire. But we will talk about that at the end. We're going to start with the ice. We're going to start at the frozen north. And the opening scene is Jon and Ed. This is something we kind of talked about. We sort of expected this to at least come up. Ed being disappointed that Jon's leaving, and they kind of have a little argument about it. It's interrupted by the arrival of Sansa, which just changes everything. Jon, soon after, Jon's not talking about leaving anymore. He's talking about, all right, yep, got to save Rickon. It's kind of like, you know, those old movies, that joke, because just when I'm out, they pull me back in. Jon took that to the next level. Just when I'm dead, they resurrect me, bring me back. It's just like, that's Pacino in Godfather 3, I'm pretty sure. Right? Yeah, I couldn't remember where that came from, but it's been parodied so many times that I couldn't help but think of that here. So, but it's really strong too, because Jon, he goes through all he kind of relates to Ed in a quick sentence, all the things that have gone wrong for him, all the things that have been terrible, and it really is quite a list. You know, he talks about how he had to kill people that he had respect for. And at the first you think maybe El's number. No, he's probably talking about Qhorin Halfhand. You know, he had to kill to infiltrate the wildlings. And then he has to hang Ollie, who was a boy younger than Bran. And yeah, that is hard. And of course, none of us can sympathize specifically with what it's like to be murdered. That isn't going to help his feelings on me. But it's a little easier for me to sympathize with having killed someone I admire. Oh, wait, I should say it on here. Too late. Edit that out. And no. We're posting that. We're posting that. So it's really interesting. I thought it was a very moving scene. The music really added to it. And Jon and Sansa's reunion was neat because they really were never a thing before. But just because their family and their experiences individually have been so awful, it was just such a relief for them to see each other, even though they never really had much in common growing up. They didn't, you know, Sansa, like she says, she's like, you got to forgive me for how I treated you. And Jon's like, that's nothing compared to what I've been through. Like, you get a sense that he's like, yeah, it was kind of crappy how you treated me, but I've been through all this, like, being treated bad by my I wish someone would treat me like you were treating me. Yeah, that's nothing compared to being stabbed by his own, you know, brotherhood and seeing the dead walk and having to kill a young boy that he loved, etc. Yeah, like seeing the dead walk. Memories in the mirror. Yeah, himself. He just has to look at him. It's like, oh crap, I'm walking. So yeah. What did that have a similar impact for you? The emotional resonance of that scene being strong. Of course, it was kind of interesting how they set it up with a little humor there. Brienne and Tormund getting a look. It was a nice balance of comic relief with this emotional moment. Love at first sight. So that's where as soon as they like saw each other, like, oh. Oh yeah, it was love at first sight for him. She put her hand on her sword. She's like, wait a minute. That's not a brother in the Night's Watch. That guy's not wearing black.
Yeah, I thought it was a great scene, and it did occur to me as it started unfolding that it's been seasons, years. It's been years since we, as viewers, since we've seen these characters together. And then, like, it was maybe only one time or something. I don't remember for sure.
When the Baratheons arrived.
It was like the second episode when they left, right? When she went south and John went north.
Yeah.
I don't even remember if they ever spoke a word to each other. I don't
think they
specifically
did.
remember an interaction between them. I'm sure there's some scene where, like, the Starks are all standing together and Robert comes up or whatever, but I don't remember them actually interacting.
Yeah, I don't think they did. I think they said 0 words to each other in the show prior to the scene.
And I'll say it's been like a feeling or a hope or an expectation throughout the show for characters who've been scattered to the winds to reunite.
Yeah.
And
just any little bit of Stark happiness is we've been so starved for that.
And
that it's like, oh, these characters don't even know each other. Oh, it's so happy for them, you know, and it's like they don't hardly even know each other.
It's something that I don't know how many other people are with me in that, and he's waiting for these characters to get back together, or maybe some of them for the first time to interact. But there's so many unique, distinct, interesting characters whose storylines to different degrees are intertwined, and you want so bad to see them talk to each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can imagine you could have a whole episode, a whole season of Sansa and Jon just catching up, just like telling their stories to each other about all the stuff that Joffrey did to me, and Jon they're telling about.
That's actually a great point, because they yada over some of that. They show us that they've had these conversations. That's already Jon has explained that he's been dead and that his brothers did this, and Sansa has explained that their brothers are alive, because he just says blah blah blah. These are alive. It's not explained. Jon doesn't react to that, so he's clearly she's already told him. So that's a big piece of information.
I wonder though how much she's explained about what Ramsay's done to her. I wonder how easy it is for her to talk about that, especially to her own brother, because it seemed like her telling him about Ramsay, I think, should have been enough. And like, let's go. You know what I mean? Yeah. But he wasn't there yet. So I wonder if
he's still got this. He's want out. He's still, you know, and I think it was until the letter. She had sort of convinced him, but the letter just was like, all right, there's no way now. I'm back in full.
And the way that Jon was like, she can't read this. It sounds like, give me that.
Yeah.
You don't know. Whatever you think you're reading, it's happened to me already. Give me that. You know, and that's kind of why I think that she maybe didn't go into detail of what Ramsay had done to her, you know.
It's a bit
she
of a
knew
theme.
that would be,
It's a bit of a theme in this episode, is the women being stronger than the men. The men kind of crumpling a bit, kind of losing their nerve. Loras, Jon, Sansa has to bring him in. Certainly Jorah and Dario don't lose their nerve, but Dany, they come to rescue her, and Dany takes over immediately, saying, "No, this is what we're doing."
Yeah.
So that's not them being weak. In fact, they're being quite strong by sneaking in there. But Cersei
over.
They're
Pycelle and Tommen and even
and Asha and or Yara. Pardon me using my book name there. Yara and Theon as well. Yeah. He's just like weepy and holding his head down. She's like, put your head up. Look me in the eyes. Stop saying sorry. I mean, she's just like dressing him down. And in a sense, Missandei and Grey Worm were kind of a team against Tyrion in that sense. And then no one really topped the other. Well, in height they do, but they didn't. No one really kind of came out ahead. They sort of both said their pieces. And no one really got the best of that.
We'll talk about that more later. But I felt like Grey Worm got the last word.
He did get the last word. It's true. But I'm not sure whether he's right or not. But I think he's got a point. I think they're both right.
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
everyone had good points.
Yeah, but let's stay where we're at. You're right. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
So I wanted to say one thought I had, by the way, that is going to like spill over to other things. They start that shot off with the sword, Longclaw, right?
Yeah.
And I started thinking, that's interesting. That's this sword
here. It's a really nice shot. The sword looks sweet.
Sword was in Jorah's hands at one point.
It was.
Who's off with Dany now?
Yeah.
And
you know, they did a similar shot with the knife that Osha was trying to stab Ramsay. They showed it from the same angle when she was. I don't know if that meant anything, whether they were trying to parallel some sort of parallel, but I was like, it's a similar kind of a way with just focusing on the handle of the knife. You know, I wasn't sure if they meant that was intentional or they meant some sort of connection between those scenes, but I thought it was cool.
I thought it was neat though to the connections, the little things tying these characters together across the world, you know, that how Jorah had that sword and gave it back to his father, and he gave it to Jon Snow, and it's just like there's also this sort of parallel between the Harpies in Meereen and the Sparrows in King's Landing. Different motivations, but still the troubles of the powers that be controlling the population. I think that's we see two different leaders tackling this. And man, I shouldn't start talking about this now, but I was thinking about the idea because they put that idea in my head when Tyrion said something. He was talking to the other slave masters from the other cities, and he said, "There's no slavery in Westeros, and I grew up richer than you." And it was again creating that difference between Tyrion. We saw that difference. They're trying to show us how Tyrion is coming at things differently than Missandei and Grey Worm. And for better or worse, he's just from a different world, a different mentality, a different experience, and he grew up wealthy. We have other Lannisters who also, we see Cersei, who also grew up wealthy, Tom and Jaime, right, and how they're dealing with an uprising in their city. I think it's neat to see the differences in these scenarios, and the differences and similarities in these different characters and scenarios on other sides of the world.
So we got after the Sansa Jon scene, we get they catch up, they kind of get a little momentum. She's convinces Jon of what needs to be done. We have some other scenes at Castle Black that are very important. We have something that we kind of didn't see coming that we really should have. And it's funny, like no one even seems to have commented asking what's going to happen with this. And it's kind of obvious. We didn't talk about it in book to show or show only, is Brienne and Davos and Melisandre coming together. We talked about that we briefly talked about, I think in the preview episode, that if that ever happens, if they get together, there'll be some reckoning. We certainly talked about Davos and Melisandre and Shireen. And that came up finally before Brienne interrupts them. Yeah. But that was, to me, some people were wondering why it took him so long to ask that question. Well, I think, first of all, there were more pressing matters. Second of all, they don't want to just spill everything out in one scene. Third of all, I think he was afraid to ask. I think he's afraid to know the answer. He doesn't want to know. He's a little, he kind of already knows, but he's like, he finally got his courage up to ask because he's a little worked up.
Also, we pointed this out a lot. They kind of play around with time.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell, it's only been 3 days at the Wall, maybe 4 days. Very little time has passed.
That's true. John's packing up when we start, and he just says he's leaving. It's probably like minutes later.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I don't know how much time might have gone by from when, he hangs the traitors to like Brienne and Sansa showing up, but from the beginning of the season till the end of last episode was only 2 or 3 days.
Yeah,
as far as I can
tell. The Wall. Yeah,
right at the Wall. I think different amounts of time occurred in other areas,
and to be fair, it's a criticism I have of the show. They play pretty fast and loose with time, and there's lots of examples of this. Sam and Gilly have been on the water forever, and Theon just got to the Iron Islands just like that, haven't even traveling overland for example. And Littlefinger just flies all over the place in his mysterious teleporter, which we've referenced many times, something that we all need ourselves in real life. But
Littlefinger?
No, we do not need a little finger. Everyone, no.
I think I'm okay with some of it. I think that what I can accept that what they can do is divvy out what they're showing us from something that happened in a short period of time.
It didn't necessarily happen at the same time as the other scenes we're seeing.
Right. Like Sam and Gilly might already be where they're going compared to stuff we're watching elsewhere, but they just haven't showed us that yet.
It's storytelling. Things are in certain order. Right. Yeah, you have to give them a little leeway, and maybe they've taken more leeway than they should have, but, oh well.
Here and there, I think things might happen that couldn't have happened, Littlefinger traveling especially, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I'm not lodging any kind of complaint at the Wall, merely pointing out that Davos might not have had time yet to address Melisandre.
Agree. There's also a lot of these challenges that they're facing as real, in the real world, like the fact that they had cast all these young people as actors and they're growing faster than the time passes on the show. Yeah. Nothing you can do about that. Nothing you can do about the fact that Rickon, doesn't look like he's 6 or 7. You just have to say, okay, he's not 6 or 7, or you can say, oh, he's a really large 7-year-old. You just have to kind of wrap your head around it and not worry about it too much.
I would have thought that he would be older than that anyway, and I think he should. In my mind, he was 10 or 12. He still looks pretty big and tall for 10 or 12.
I've kind of lost track of how old he is. Especially hard to keep track of two different sets of ages when you have book. It's one thing to keep your facts straight from book to show canon, but little things like ages that are kind of fudged on the show in the first place, they're not really paying. It's almost like why. even pin that down.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. He's a young boy.
Yeah, he's a young whatever. You know, Tom and all these young Sam, their ages they have ages. Then they are what they are. So yeah, but Mel and Davos it was pretty interesting. You could see that I was kind of wondering what Mel would say to that, and then Bran just walks over, sword drawn. Yeah. It's like, I saw it. Yeah, I saw it. I executed him. You know, and he admitted it. You know, and they're like, I don't think this is going to amount to anything. I don't think there's going to be any conflict that comes from this. Maybe they'll like stare each other down from time to time and kind of like, but they're all basically on Team Stark now. I mean, Sansa's gotten the pledge from Brienne to sort of be her, you know, knight of sorts, you know, her sworn shield. And clearly Davos and clearly Melisandre has said, I'm doing what Jon wants me to do. I'm Jon Snow and Sansa and Jon are together. So that brings Melisandre and Brienne on the same team. And Davos, well, he doesn't have anything else to do. Assuming he's getting involved in all this, helping the Starks. Sansa talks about how the plenty of northern houses out there that would fight for Jon, you know, and for her too. She didn't really say it that way, but that's also true. She's a Stark, so they would absolutely fight for her. At least some of them would. And it remains to be seen which ones, presumably. I mean, I think that's something we can expect to see is them either together or breaking into groups, going out and trying to see what support they can get elsewhere. And so we'll see what happens with that. That's interesting. I want to presumably that will lead to an epic conflict showdown with the Boltons. And of course, they spoke how we got some numbers. Sansa says Bolton probably has 5,000-ish. Yeah. Tormund's like 2,000. We got 2,000, and they're not going to be as well equipped as Bolton's men either. So they definitely need more men. They're not going to just try to go head to head with the Boltons with 5,000 versus 2,000. Jon's like, yeah, we can't do that. So
Ramsay may screw up or be too hasty or whatever else, but they're also in a castle. You know what I mean? They have to siege the castle. Maybe they meet them on a battlefield, but
well, Ramsay wants to get Sansa back, so he's not going to he can't just sit there.
He can't just sit back and wait.
Yeah, he's got to go out and do his thing. Well, that's why he tried the threat first. It's like, give me Sansa, and you know, we're all good. That letter, what did you think of the letter? The letter was pretty powerful, huh?
It was a standard Ramsay.
Yeah, it was kind of powerful, but maybe not out of line. Yeah,
this is what I think of it actually specifically. I think he's trying to goad Jon into a mistake. You know what I mean? I think that he knows Jon isn't as ready as he should or could be for a battle, but he wants to push the issue. He doesn't want to give Jon a chance to get ready for a battle. He wants to pull him into it. Now,
he wants he's basically trying to tempt Jon into breaking his vows. Now, Jon has already kind of exited his vows, unbeknownst to Ramsay. Ramsay doesn't know that Jon was killed. Like that news clearly hasn't spread, at least to that point. If it's spread at all, it certainly hasn't reached the Dreadfort yet. You wonder if the messenger that brought the Dreadfort messenger is going to maybe find that out and tell Ramsay, but I don't see how he would learn that. I don't know if they would. He probably just dropped his message off and left, you know, but maybe not. So that'd be interesting if Ramsay learned that. How would it affect things if Ramsay's like, he's dead, came back? What does that mean? You know,
he might blow it off. He might not believe it. He might just kill the messenger.
He'd probably think it was. He'd probably think it was kind of. Yeah.
I'll kill you and see if you come back telling me stories. Hold your fingers out.
So I don't think there's going to be. I think the Davos and Melisandre's Brienne stuff is just going to be, you know, maybe some tension there, but they're all on the same team now, so I don't think that's going to go anywhere other than that. And Jon being sucked in, you know, I think that's the big thing here. He's successfully argued his way out of his vows. It's not like Ed's going to like kill him to say, no, you can't do this. You know. They haven't really some of the brothers maybe haven't accepted it yet, but like they're not gonna kill him. I don't think they're gonna stop him. Like he's got a reasonable argument for why he's not wanted and how his vows are not valid anymore because he did give his life.
There also may even be some justification. I've said in the past many times, I feel like Jon Snow, let's call him Jon Snark, is not as concerned with details as the spirit of a law, you know what I mean? I think his honor and the intent behind it is what matters to him more, and he's not looking for technicalities. However, when you've been killed and come back to life, you might tweak your moral stance a little bit and go ahead and find the justification. I feel like there's enough outside of norm occurrences here that it's not like someone on the wall can never leave the wall. Right. They can't abandon their brotherhood, but you know, we saw the Yoren go down. We know it's common practice to go down and recruit more people and taking trips to Molestown and it's so on. You know, So there's precedent set for leaving the wall to take on some other mission.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to get involved in politics, right? You're not supposed to care about the goings on of the kingdom. But John maybe is in a gray area. You know, he maybe could still be part of the wall. Maybe
he's being threatened. He's a member. He's a brother. And it's like, is that you know, when you threaten a brother in the Night's Watch, isn't that threatening all of them? Isn't that kind of like it is a gray area. Yeah.
This is another precedent. You know, like if Mormont was still there, you know what I mean?
Yeah. What would he do?
None of these upstarts and changes, and I hadn't even seen zombies say, and some lord of some other castle sent a threat to him at the walls, like, I'm going to attack and kill your family. Well, Mormont be like, well, I can't get mixed up in those politics. I'm just going to stay here and bury my head in the sand. You know, like I feel like some action is going to be taken, and it might be as simple as enlisting help of other houses. Even if he can't personally go fight, maybe he would go personally fight. Maybe things change when you've been killed and come back to life.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to point out, by the way, I thought it was interesting. I don't think we ever saw a scene with Sansa and Melisandre.
We haven't yet, no.
I think that they may have been on screen in the same panning shot. I don't even know. I don't even think that's the case, so we didn't see them together. It seemed like...
don't think so either.
The showmakers seemed to be specifically separating them in their presentation.
Why do you think that would be? I'm not sure.
I don't know. It might just be random. It might just be when the actors were scheduled on what shooting day, what set, or whatever. But maybe they're...
I can't think of why it would matter.
Melisandre is being kept separate from the rest of the Night's Watch in general. She's somehow secluded on her own or by other people. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm reading something into it that's not there, but it's just something I took note of.
Okay.
That she just went in every scene. She was never present with them. And maybe they're saving that up. Maybe there'll be a scene where Sansa and Melisandre come together.
Yeah.
But I don't think that...
when they had the dinner scene, neither Davos wasn't there.
Right,
either.
exactly. Once again.
Well, that's because I don't think you don't invite Davos and Brienne to eat at the same table.
No,
not at that point.
Fair enough. But part of why I'm bringing this up is because I don't think that the conflict between them is just going to be washed over. I think there's more of that conversation.
Oh, I agree. There's more. I think there's probably more to it. It just won't. I don't think it'll amount to any violence or anything. I don't think it'll amount to any real conflict.
Maybe, probably, but in my mind, I don't think that Davos is okay with. I don't think he got an answer about Shireen.
Oh, I'm not saying between Davos.
I mean?
I'm not talking about between Davos and Melisandre. There may be some sort of reckoning there. I'm talking about between Brienne and Melisandre and Davos.
I still wonder about that also. I think they'll be begrudgingly on the same side because they have a common enemy. And
I agree, but they're not going to fight each other. That's all I'm saying is they will not come to blows.
They might not come to blows, but they'll come to contention. Like there may be disagreement.
They already have.
Which direction they should go. Right? Should we go back to Winterfell? Should we get support? Should we split up and go different directions since we don't get along with each other?
Yeah. I definitely don't think they'll be together one way or the other. That might kind of take care of it one way. That might be a simple way to take care of it. Just don't split them apart.
And maybe that will build up to a reconciliation. Maybe there will be a good, crowning moment when someone proves themselves to the other. You know, when Davos makes some sacrifice and Brienne's respect is won, or Melisandre proves her power or loyalty to whatever,
I could see Davos winning Brienne over pretty well because he's just the kind of guy he is. They're very similar in their attitudes and their honor and their honesty and their loyalty. Melisandre's another story. I have no idea what Brienne's going to think of Melisandre in the long term. We'll have to wait on that one. Okay, we'll take a quick break here and come back with some talk about the Vale and onward. For those of you who don't know what those little breaks are all about, it's not actually a break to some of you. That's a spot for a YouTube ad to go in. If you have your ad blocker on, then it's just, there's nothing there. So it seems kind of odd, but just thought I'd explain that for people who are a little confused by the fact that the break is 2 seconds long to some people.
Hey, sometimes you just need a break.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a break. You got to lean back and have a sip of your beverage. Speaking of, hugely important thing I didn't bring up last week. First 2 weeks we talked about what we're drinking. Didn't do it last week. So Sean, let's make up for lost time. What are you drinking today?
This is Wildfire.
Wildfire.
Yeah.
Right here. See, on my shirt, I got Wildfire. It says Valyrian Energy. It does. It's kind of a similar color.
It's Wildfire mixed with Mountain Dew.
There was a Targaryen once who drank Wildfire, thinking he would turn him into a dragon.
I'm already a dragon.
Okay, good, because that didn't work out.
A bearded dragon.
It didn't work out well for him.
There's a lizard called a bearded dragon.
Oh, yeah, I have heard that, yeah.
I'm not that though. I'm real all out dragon.
And you've got a Cowboy Bebop shirt there, huh?
Yeah.
Right
Spike silhouette.
Yeah, since I can't match you in beard game, I can at least try to match you in shirt game. I've still got some catching up to do, but this Wildfire shirt is my attempt.
Valerian energy.
Yeah, it's like the Monster Energy drink, exactly. All right, so onward. Let's go to the Vale. Let's talk about. We haven't seen the Vale at all this season. We didn't really see. Actually, probably haven't seen the Vale for quite a while. Because Littlefinger's last scene in last season was, I think, episode 7 or 8. Maybe it was 9, and it was in King's Landing. So we haven't seen the Vale for a little while. We don't see much of the Vale, of course, but we see this is a neat scene. There's a little bit of interesting subtext here, and you just got to appreciate just how well Littlefinger just runs things just by knowing how to manipulate the people in charge. He's pretty much got Robert Arryn. Aaron's so excited to see him. He just defers to him on everything. And the little really cool subtext I'm referring to is the Falcon itself. The Falcon is the sigil of House Arryn.
Right.
He gives him a falcon. It's like, I'm giving you the falcon. You're the Falcon Lord, but I'm providing it to you. It's like I'm the one who's ruling through. It's like who's really in charge kind of thing. Because I've got control over this kid, and this kid's whims, I can know how to manage them. You better watch out, Lord Royce.
Yeah,
yeah. It's like you almost got him thrown through the moon door. That was like, I was like, whoa, this could really happen here. The moon door wasn't anywhere nearby, but still, they could have taken him there.
It was a pretty short scene, but a lot was conveyed in that scene. I really liked it. There are a couple of things, even like I have a slight instinct to want to complain about, but it still stirred my thoughts on a lot of stuff. So, one is I to keep in mind, pointing out, Littlefinger's ability to kind of manipulate a situation. I think a lot of it comes from his ability to kind of anticipate. He kind of knew there was at least a chance that Royce was going to be like suspicious of him. And he didn't just like get off the cart, get accused by Royce and like, whoa, I didn't think you're going to be, like, he's been thinking about this.
He was prepared to turn it around. Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways Royce could have come at him, and Littlefinger was prepared for all of them.
Yeah.
And it was also, I think, telling that, because I had wondered if Royce was going to be like this grumpy hard ass that wouldn't put up with Robin, but he seemed to be patient with him. He didn't seem to be happy, but he put on a smile. He was there with him in training. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was a very forced. I was like, yeah, nice shot, kid.
Yeah, but Robin didn't throw him through the moon door. He must have developed somewhat of a rapport. Robin's not out to get Royce. And they've made Royce out to be a good, honorable man, you know, and he better look out for Littlefinger. And I wonder if there's a chance Littlefinger's underestimating Royce. Probably not. Probably, even if he was, Royce is still, a league beneath.
Yeah, he's been cowed. He thought, he's like, every time Royce tries to step to Littlefinger's ready for it,
Yeah.
And I thought another thing that was really neat here was how Littlefinger we may have learned a little more about what Littlefinger's plan has been all along here, which is that you could see how he waited. He didn't tell Sweet Robin, hey, we need to go rescue Sansa. He just set it up and was like, Sansa's been captured. She's in danger. Yeah. And so
she's my cousin.
Littlefinger, and he's like, we need to rescue her. He's like, yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Yeah. He was like prepared to go along with whatever Sweet Robin said, but he knew what it was going to go.
He was leading him.
He knows. Yeah, he knew what the answer would be, but he was prepared. If he's like, I don't care, we're not gonna, let's just let her suffer. He was like, he probably had something else in mind to like maybe try to convince him, or to be
steer in another way. He could pull Royce aside and say, look, we both know Robin's crazy. I wouldn't let him throw you through the door. Come on, we need to go rescue Sansa. You're right. House Stark has always been done right. He could have played it many different ways. And I think that here's the one thing about the scene that slightly irked me. I felt like the guards around were a little too quick to step up.
Yeah, those should have been some of those should have been Royce men loyal to him.
Yeah. And or they should know who he is and that Robin's crazy. These guys like standing around, are they oblivious to everything? Like on some level, kind of like when Tyrion was coaching someone about Joffrey. If Joffrey says, let the horses go, let the horses go. But if Joffrey says, slaughter all the horses, come tell me first. All right. I feel like if Robin says, throw Royce through the moon door, if Robin says throw the stable voice to the moon door, fine.
No,
the stable voice to the moon door. But it says throw Royce to the moon door. I thought, let's go talk. Let's hold on a second.
Yeah, because that means the Royce soldiers might not support the Aarons, and that's a big deal because they're the second most powerful house in the Vale. I mean, assuming.
And on some level, those soldiers are men with brains who perceive reality and understand the hierarchy and chain of command and repercussions of their actions. You know, I feel like someone there should have enough common sense to like, but sir, my lord, like, Sir Royce, maybe we should get a bite to eat, you know, like, and just avoid the confrontation rather than like seize him and throw him through the moon door. There's someone somewhere should, but maybe they're afraid to do it. Littlefinger present. Littlefinger has made a point of how he makes his presence, his authority known, you know, through payment or punishment. So
the other thing I was referring to, by the way, when I said that we maybe got more of his plan here, some people criticized the plan of putting Sansa in danger and saying, why would he risk her like that? Doesn't he know what Ramsay is like? Or doesn't he know that's risky? Doesn't he know the reputation of the Boltons? No, I think he very well did know. And he maybe didn't know fully about Ramsay, but it doesn't matter whether he did or not. He knows the Boltons and by reputation. I think this was part of his plan. He intended for Sansa to be in danger so that this would be his vehicle to get the Vale soldiers to go north. This is the only way he could get that to happen. It was by having a reason, and that reason being a blood relative is in danger. Especially a female blood relative, which is, you know, in this chivalrous Westerosi culture, you're supposed to rescue damsels, especially highborn ladies like this, especially ones who are your own cousin. So that, or I mean, more so if they're your sister or something, but still, that's a big deal. And I think this is what Littlefinger has been setting up all along, along with other things. I mean, he's got multiple irons in the fire, but this was his plan with Sansa, was to send her there, realize the word that she was in danger or having difficulties, because again, it's a long shot that they would kill her. It's possible that they would kill her, but holy crap, that would be stupid, because look at what Ramsay's doing now. Everything is about trying to get her back. Look at how much Roose was like, you lost, losing her is everything. Like that was the biggest mistake, you know? So it shows why Littlefinger could be confident that while they may torture her, while they may do bad things to her, they will not outright kill her. And that's all that matters. He's like, well, as long as they don't kill her, we're good. You know, and that is what happened. They did do awful things to her, but they did not kill her, and so that part of the plan worked pretty much perfectly. And now he's going to get to take the Vale army north. Well, I don't know what he's going to do once they get there, but one theory is that because he was mistreated by Catelyn Tully, because he fell in love with her when he was young, that his whole life arc has been about being worthy of the nobility and being on that footing, and he's especially to be a Stark, you know, because a Stark is who got Catelyn, and that's what he wanted. So he's trying, you know, so maybe it's been a prevailing theory for a long time. Maybe he's been trying to get Winterfell for himself. I don't know if that's the case or not, but there's certainly more to Littlefinger's plan. And the more we see of it, the more to me, some of the things that maybe didn't make sense are starting to make more sense. What do you think about the plan overall? Is that kind of where you're at?
Yeah, that does make sense. One thing, I have thought, and we've talked before about what is his end goal. Like, is he making a player to sit on the Iron Throne? Could he even theoretically do that? And maybe it seems so unlikely.
But as high as he can go.
How high could he go? You know, what is his aspiration? Like, because it seemed like if his goal had been to be Lord of the Dreadfort, that would have been quite an accomplishment. Done that, moved on. What about me, Lord of the Vale? Done that. Is that it? He's done now? I guess, okay, Lord of the Vale, I'm happy. I'm like, no, he's still moving. He's still taking action and plotting. Lord of Winterfell, that might be like what he wanted it, and you know, assuming all the kingdoms are equal, that wouldn't be any bigger, but maybe more personal.
Yeah.
On some level, maybe the North is one of the better kingdoms out of sort of like prestige, but maybe it's sort of worse because the North
it's cold. It's not very wealthy. You know.
But if he can be the Lord of the Dreadfort, the Vale, Winterfell, why can't he be king too?
Well, he could be, you know, since these realms potentially aren't united under the Iron Throne anymore. Yeah, maybe he could just be king of a new realm.
Yeah,
it seems a bit much, but he could also be trying to do what classically throughout history, what ambitious people who lack the proper blood to be king is they try to rule through someone who is weak. So he could be trying to make Robert Arryn king of all these places because he is an established lord of a long-standing great house, and that people could tolerate, and he could rule through Robert because he obviously has him in his pocket.
That easily could be it or part of it. One thing that was pointed out that would hold him back from being able to seize the throne and be king is he hasn't really proved himself militarily. But if he leads the army to Winterfell and conquers the Boltons and
that would be huge,
marries Sansa, I don't know how likely she would be to marry him, but
yeah, I don't know if Sansa's going to be too happy with Littlefinger after what she put him in.
Yeah, well, which leads me to another thing I wanted to talk about, because that was something we debated a lot. We talked a lot about whether or not Littlefinger knew or would know or should know. It seemed like he has his finger on the pulse.
Some people can't believe he didn't know, and so they think he was lying. And
that's how I felt.
I think it's plausible that he didn't know, but more like I'd lean towards he knew and was lying.
Yeah,
but I would. It's plausible that he didn't know.
He also might have known that Ramsay was crazy, but not known the extent of how crazy he was. And he may have been willing to take a gamble with Sansa, but maybe he didn't realize how big of a gamble it was.
And again, crazy isn't stupid, because he has to be. Right. There's crazy and there's stupid, and killing Sansa would have been stupid for Ramsay. For the reasons we explained already. So, and then Littlefinger just like Tyrion said about the slavers, he's like, they're not going to work against their own best interest. You don't have to trust them. You don't have to consider them friends. You just have to assume they'll work towards their best interest, and his best interest is keeping Sansa alive. Like, killing her would be mega dumb.
Trust is an interesting word, and sometimes you, quote unquote, trust someone because you know how they're going to behave. Yeah. Not because you like or agree with their behavior, but you know what it's going to be.
You trust the information you have on them. Yeah. Not do you trust that they will do right by you. It's a different kind of trust. Yeah. It's like it's more like I can predict their actions. It's not like I can trust them. You know, it's more like saying, I know what he's going to do. I know how he's going to play this, or at least close enough, Okay, well, we should probably move on. We got a lot to talk about here. That's we've just gotten back to the Vale and the Knights of the Vale. It's pretty exciting how much they were able to pull off in that short scene. But there is, of course, more to come, and this is just beginning. There is a bit of a clue as to what might come next in this plot line, but as usual, we will discuss all next on. So week 5 Game of Thrones chat will be after our credits as usual, so we won't spoil anyone who wants to keep unspoiled on what's coming up. The trailer for next week had a couple of juicy tidbits, but like I said, we'll keep those for the end, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, let's go to King's Landing. We're going to stay on King's Landing for a while. Lots to talk about with King's Landing. And as I said before, we will finish with Dany and the fire. So now King's Landing, a lot happening here. And I think this is a lot of cleverness happening here, something very cool. Watching the episode a few times, when I first watched the episode, I didn't catch this. As usual, I watched the episode, well, I actually watched it more than 3 times, but fully 3 times and then parts of it the rest of the time. So after the second watch, I caught something that was interesting that I think is a big underlying theme here. First of all, the High Sparrow, he tells Tommen that Marjorie's going to get walked through the streets like Cersei did, and he says he told me not to tell anyone. Okay. if you don't have your if your conspiracy sensors aren't on, it might have slid past like it did for me in my first watch. Because when I watched the first time, I'm just watching as a fan. I don't turn my full analytical brain on until my second watch and the third, when I'm really looking for clues. And there's just no way that the High Sparrow didn't know that Tommen would tell Cersei. This is a huge setup. Tommen is accidentally telling his mother something that was planted. The High Sparrow knew for a fact that Tommen would tell his mother, and he knows what they're going to do. He knows they're going to jump in with their military might somehow and do something. He doesn't necessarily know exactly what their plan is going to be, but he's ready for this. Something, I have no idea what the trick is going to be, what's going to happen, but I am positive that he is tricking them and that he knows exactly what they're going to do. He knows they're going to send soldiers in or something to that effect, and he's got something ready for them. No idea what.
I agree with you. I was a little more suspicious right off the bat.
Good for you.
I was like, there's it's too convenient and it makes too much sense, and it's I don't know what it'll be. I don't know what his play is. One thing I think a lot about is like what what is his end game? Say they didn't do anything. Say everything went his way. Say Marjorie confessed and Loras confessed and they had a trial and Cersei confessed. Does he like execute them when they're clearly guilty through evidence or confession, or does he like absolve them and let them go? Like, I'm almost confident one thing that's just not going to happen is suddenly all these rich, greedy, powerful people turn good, right? That's just not going to happen. Right. And I think he probably knows that too. Like, he may think he might legit get through to 1 or 2 out of 10, you know, like Lance.
Like Lance, yeah, exactly. Right. Perfect example,
you know, and he's probably had some experiences before with this. He may get a few people to legit turn over, but as opposed to what, I still can't quite tell. Like, Cersei even goes on for a moment, like he doesn't care about anything of this world. He wants to tear it down and replace it with nothing. I wonder if that, and he even kind of had this moment right before he arrested Cersei, if I remember right, last season, where he's like kind of in awe of this altar, this simple stone slab compared to this gaudy gold set that we have. This is what really matters. This basic, simple thing here. Yeah. I wonder if he really will just tear King's Landing down. And if he did, how does the rest of the kingdom respond to that?
There's some huge foreshadowing in this in all these scenes too. Okay, I don't even know where to start hardly. I'm really excited about all the things that happened in King's Landing. What's cool is Cersei gets her head of steam and she's like, oh, this is how I'm going to get us all on the same team, because I'm going to tell Olenna and Kevin what's going to happen, and I can play on both of their deepest, darkest fears by referencing their own children, saying, don't you want to rescue Lancel? Don't you want Marjorie to not do this? She's like, yeah, this is not happening. Yeah. And I love the subtlety of Olenna sitting down.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, we can talk.
When they first walked in, when Jaime and Cersei first walk in, she even said, haven't we gone over this? And they stand up like, we'll just leave. We can't force you to leave, but we just won't have our meeting around you.
Yeah.
And then Cersei and Jaime get their 2 cents in. And Kevin and Olenna sit back down.
They're like, okay, you've won this round for now. We'll talk. Yeah, it was really cool. That was a really subtle way to handle that. And also, like, I was suspicious too, but I had my suspicion in the wrong place. I was because Tommen we don't hear Tommen say what he's going to say, and then just the next scene is Cersei coming in saying this is what's going to happen. I thought maybe Cersei was the one lying.
I see. Yeah.
But no, but upon reflection, like, no, Cersei's just took the bait. She just totally took the bait, and everyone else took the bait too, because it's such for one thing, it's such an emotional thing. Like, Marjorie's going to be Marjorie Street like you were, because right before it's announced, Olenna's like, you were Marsh in front of everybody. You're worthless now.
Yeah, you
like,
lost your dignity.
That ruined you. And like, well, it's going to happen to your granddaughter. Like, oh, okay, then we have to stop that. And it's awesome too, because it's another theme of this episode. It's what Tyrion said. It's their contempt. We can use their contempt against. That's their weakness. And this is the weakness. They're so contemptuous of the High Sparrow, calling him a dirty peasant and his dirty hands and his grubby this and that, and how he has no plan and just wants to tear everything down. They're totally underestimating him because he's this lowborn guy.
Yeah.
And that's a common theme in this episode too, is underestimating your enemies. Like, and a lot of in both on large scale and small scale. Like, obviously the Khals underestimated Dany big time, and obviously. And Osha underestimated Ramsay. Yeah. She thought she could, like, be sneaky to him. She thought she knew what was going on because he had her bathed. She thought he was expecting sex, but Ramsay just set her up. That was a total setup. He knew that he was going to kill her. It was like sport.
Yeah, the whole thing was just a game to him. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm getting away from King's Landing again. Yeah. This is the episode of tangents apparently. So. And that's because some of the things tie together. I think this episode was really strong with the themes tying to each other here and there, and that's part of why we're jumping all over the place. There's my excuses. So, getting back to King's Landing, I'm really excited about this because it's such a great setup, and I have no idea what the gotcha is going to be.
So, okay, my thoughts going through it as I was watching it the first time. My thoughts are definitely still stirring on it at this moment. But when they cut, Tom's like, I have to tell you something, Mother. She's like, what is it? Trust me. Cut to the next scene, like, oh God. What?
Yeah, they were going to conceal it.
You know what I mean?
They did. Yeah.
But then the next scene is like, oh, that's okay. That's what it was.
Yeah.
But then I got a little suspicious again of Cersei myself when Olenna says, oh, that cannot happen. That will not happen. And Cersei says, no, it won't.
I agree.
Yeah. And I wonder if I kind of wondered in that moment if Cersei's either plotting or planning or not caring if Marjorie gets killed in all this.
I don't think she cares. Well, I mean, Tommen brought that up. She says, "You don't care. You don't like Marjorie. You don't like, and she's like, she kind of deflects the question. She doesn't really answer it.
She's
like,
admit to it, but
what did they do to me? Remember what they did to me? He's like trying to fire him up. Like, remember what they did to me? They marched me through the street. Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
blah.
She says it doesn't matter what I think about her at all.
Yeah,
she's the queen. She's the queen.
That's true. Yeah,
and on some level, that status is important to Cersei because she was the queen, and maybe will be the queen regent at least again if Marjorie is killed. Like I don't know for sure, but I feel like Cersei isn't necessarily trying to rescue Marjorie here.
Yeah, she's just trying to beat the High Sparrow.
Right. And Marjorie might just be collateral damage.
Yeah, exactly. If she's collateral damage, that's what happened. And speaking of Marjorie, that's another thing that's really interesting about all this is Marjorie's the one person that's figured this all out.
Yeah,
she's understands she goes along with High Sparrow. When she's like, what happened next? She's like encouraging him to tell his story. And then when she gets in the cell with Laura, she's like, they're trying to bring us down, blah blah blah. She's totally on top of things, and Laura's just like, make it stop, let them win. I'm like, damn, dude. Like that's not the Knight of Flowers that I was hoping for here, but he is a little, kind of a spoiled rich kid that can't handle it in this case. He's still probably a badass fighter. He probably hasn't lost that as long as he gets his nerve back. And
he's intelligent enough to recognize it too. He in past conversations, he said like, I've never even been in battle. I'm not a great one. I just trained a lot. I just won some tournaments.
Good point,
he has some humility about him, if you will.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing, there's so many things to talk about.
Yeah.
The crime that Marjorie is accused of here is basically lying.
Yeah.
Right?
That's perjury.
And maybe in a church's eyes or in God's eyes or even
it was like a trial.
All sins are equal, I don't know. But it seems like what Cersei's accused of, incest and lying plus incest on down the line, she's in more trouble than Marjorie.
Yes.
And Loras, however severe his crime is, maybe it's on par with lying. I can imagine maybe it seems more blasphemous to the church.
It's not really clear how.
What do they call it? Buggery.
Buggery.
But the thing is, he can't stop being who he is. Marjorie can say, I lied, I'm sorry, I feel bad about that, I shouldn't have done it, I won't do it again. But Loras can't say, I'm not homosexual anymore there. You know what I mean? Like, it's harder for him. The accusation on him is harder to deal with.
They might actually buy it. He's like, I won't do that again. I swear never to do that again. Or they might buy that.
I mean, maybe he could.
Because they're zealots and they think it's choice,
Yeah. But I'm just pointing out it's a tougher accusation.
Absolutely. He can't prove that he won't do it again.
Who he is being attacked rather than an action he took. Does that make sense?
And I think Marjorie she went into the room trying to convince him to play along, to try and play along, give them what they want.
Yeah, she thought this was like a chance to get on the same page, get a plan together.
But he's just
worthless.
Yeah, he's just gone. Yeah, for now, like maybe she can help him bring him back into things. But yeah, he's not helpful right now. He's not gonna. Yeah. She thought that they could team up a little and maybe do something, but she
might not choose him as her champion in a trial by combat.
I certainly wouldn't right now.
All right, let me think. I have one other thought.
Let's spend a few more minutes on King's Landing, then we'll move on.
I did want to make one point. I thought they did a good job. It was sort of a well-designed cinematic moment. Mm-hmm. When Cersei approaches Tommen, who's talking to Pycelle. Mm-hmm. I thought it was just good camera work. Like we're on Cersei, and we hear her footsteps softly, and it kind of backs up to the image of Tommen and Pycelle in a room, but the focus is still on Cersei's face. She's still clear, and she listens for a moment, and then opens the door. And as she opens the door, the camera focus shifts to the background of Pycelle and Tommen, and then Pycelle leaves. And when Pycelle leaves, it's not subtle and adept. Slow. It's this slow clinking, opposed to this slow, careful, unnoticed approach of Cersei to this obvious, clumsy, loud exit of Pycelle.
And Pycelle is really playing with fire by antagonizing Cersei. You just should not. She's just too willing to just have people killed because of things that.
He's made it this far.
He has. It's true, but she's generally been on her side. I mean, she doesn't like him.
Yeah.
He's always kind of creeped her out, and she doesn't like him. But he has been like a Lannister ally. But now he's like
a Baratheon ally.
Well, he's more with he's with Kevin, and he's just not her ally. He's maybe still like on Team Lannister, but not Team Cersei specifically, and he's not really and he's not really helping Jaime either. He's taking the side of the small council. That's where his power lies.
Well, also to be fair, who he's supposed to be loyal to.
He's not loyal to the king.
He's a maester, right? The Citadel didn't say go serve Cersei.
Yeah,
right.
I just mean there's no reason for him to like give Cersei that look, like, you know, like don't antagonize her. Just keep on ambling at half a mile an hour. Don't look at her like that.
And it does also make you wonder what he does think of, like, because he did have the option to stand up for Cersei in the small council. He could have been, you know, brought the point up. He did even start to mention the precedent of Hightower being on the King's Guard. So maybe Jaime has a role here, you know. But he definitely seemed to be bringing that up to clarify that Cersei doesn't. He could have made a play to bring Cersei into the fold, but he didn't.
But it's interesting, the dialogue in this scene too, and the dialogue with Kevin when they tell him the plan of how they're going to bring the Tyrell soldiers in and just basically get in the way. Well, the subtext here, since we think this big plan is coming, that it's a plot, that the High Sparrow knows what's going to happen, I think that they're kind of telling us, kind of foreshadowing here. A lot of these conversations are foreshadowing what's going to happen. We see Pycelle saying, don't antagonize them. Don't like push this too far. You have to be very delicate with this. I think Pycelle's right. And Cersei and Jaime are like the opposite. They're like, no, we're going to meet strength with strength. We saw what happened when Jaime confronted the High Sparrow with strength. He was like, basically wasn't afraid. He was like, yeah, I'm afraid, but not of you. I'm afraid of the gods, you know? And he just deflected. He's like, I'm not afraid of your little knife, buddy. And I think this is just like the same thing grown larger. He's like, I'm not afraid of their armies. I can, you know, I've got a better plan. I've got an angle here. And when Kevin says, if this doesn't go as planned, it'll be civil war. A lot of people are going to die. And Olenna's like, a lot of people are going to die anyway. Better them than us. Yeah, well, about that.
Might be us.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be so smooth for them, because I think they're, like we said, they're walking into a trap that they haven't even perceived because of their contempt. They just don't think they can't even perceive of this possibility. And so I think the worries that Kevin and Pycelle are expressing that's the reality. That's what's going to happen. They're going to, and what is that going to mean? Civil war in King's Landing? Is there going to be just blood in the streets? Is it going to be the faith versus the crown, you know? And is it just going to be chaos until someone comes in to restore order?
Or maybe Marjorie will make a play. Marjorie maybe will kind of sense what's happening, and you know what I mean? Like, I feel like she's doing something in her mind about how to deal with this or how to respond or what to say.
I don't mind. See, I don't mind when I know what's coming. I don't mind that too much, as long as the journey is interesting. For example, with Dany, they threw us for a loop. The journey was a lot different than I thought it would be in this whole Vaes Dothrak plot line. But we knew she was going to survive and come out ahead one way or another. With this King's Landing stuff, I have no idea who's going to come out on top. I have no idea who's going to get it, who's going to die, who's going to live, or how it's going to go. I don't know the how, the why, the when, the what. I don't know any of it. So that's awesome. It's just like totally up in the air.
All right. So this is, we play this game sometimes. I mentioned sometimes at work, there's people at my job that just like bet on any random thing. You know what I mean? And so they love to bet on Game of Thrones. Who's going to go to this place? Who's going to kill them? Who's going to die this episode? Who do you think? Who do you think is safe in King's Landing? Who do you think is like the safe? Who do you think has the most plot armor? Who do you think is the least likely to be killed in King's Landing? Like I think I realize as I take my notes.
Okay, well we gotta have a time frame on that. Like for the rest of the show, for the whole rest of the show, because that's a big question. If you want to say this season, I could give a better answer for this. But if it's the whole show, I don't even know where to start. Because like who even knows?
What's up, buddy?
We have a cat making an invasion into our recording here.
All right, let me think. I'll say this season. Let's say this season. Who do you think is safe this season?
This season,
who do you think is not going to get killed in episode 9?
I think Cersei is going to survive this season. Yeah. I think Jaime will probably survive the season. I'm not so sure about Tommen. I'm not so sure about Kevin or Olenna. I doubt both Loras and Marjorie die, but one of them is maybe reasonable. Olenna, I'm kind of worried about the Sparrow. Despite his trickery, I still think it could get rough for him. And yeah, I don't know that he's got a long-term role to play. I think his role is to stir things up and to maybe create chaos and to create interesting situations and situations for these characters to kind of consider their own selves and how to manage conflict. But I think it might be just a way to pave the way for Dany to come in, and things will be for her to restore order.
Yeah.
Although she is a bit of a destroyer, as much as she is, a bringer of freedom. She's a freer of slaves, obviously, but she's also been very destructive, and she hasn't shown yet that she knows how to do these sort of things without causing massive destruction. Not that that's not a criticism. It's a really hard thing to do. What she's trying to do, ending slavery. That's a hard thing to do. Yeah. It's thousands of years old, like we hear. So,
and even ending slavery is like this sort of secondary thing she's sort of taken on. She's also trying to raise an army and a navy, independent of ending slavery. She's trying to raise an army and a navy to conquer another land.
She may have done half of that, but now she may have the army part. Anyway, well, let's take another ad break. I think that covers it for King's Landing for now. We're very excited about that plot line going forward. Not sure where it's going. Very up in the air, which is awesome. Looking forward to the surprises and whatever they do. So we'll take a quick couple seconds here, be right back with the rest of the plot lines. We're going to move on to, I guess we should we'll take a stop off in the Iron Islands before heading to the east. So be right back. Okay, folks, we're back. And wow, that was a good first hour. A lot of fun stuff there. The more we talk, the more fired up I'm getting. Wildfire. I'm a belly full of wildfire.
You're wild fired up.
Yeah, I'm wild fired up.
There's one thing before we move on I wanted to mention about King's Landing.
Sure.
Cersei came in to talk to Tommen and said, since I've missed the past few council meetings, I wanted to talk to you for a minute. I wonder, is Tommen going to the meetings?
Yeah, I think so.
So,
some of them.
Because
maybe not always.
Yeah, that's the thing that's perplexed me a little bit. Kevin said that he had been ordered by the king, Tommen, to not interfere with the da-da-da-da-da.
Okay. You would assume that would happen at a small council meeting. Yeah.
Can't at a small council meeting, Tommen insists that his mother be there? Why is he not making that play? Why is Cersei not having to make that play? Maybe he's only been in one meeting, or maybe he hasn't been in any of them, or maybe he doesn't have the balls yet. Maybe Kevin's taking an in or taking too much charge. He brought it up and got shut down, just the way he brought something up to the Sparrow and got shut down.
That seems like a likely answer. I mean, he even backed down. When Cersei came in and was like, "What are you doing here?" to Grand Maester, even he looked guilty. He stood up and looked guilty too, like he was doing something wrong. Yeah, this kid is not going to grow a spine overnight, if ever.
But it seemed like he was growing one when he was talking to Cersei in that episode.
He had his moments.
I should have done this for you. I should have done this for you. I want to be strong. I want you to teach me.
When he's like feeling
going to the council, Cersei needs to get him to go into the council and have them put her back on. Maybe she doesn't even need to. She's made her
now. After this, it seems like she's got her foot back in the door there, at least for now.
Just a curiosity that I had about how these council meetings are going.
And Jamie had a good point there too, because they were like, Olenna was like, "What use is she now? What you're used up basically." And Jamie's like, because Jamie was kind of playing the good Lannister, bad Lannister game there. He's like, Cersei is the Queen Mother and has the ear of the king, and that means something. She can still influence Tommen, and Tommen's decisions are what matters. And Olenna didn't really have a response to that because it was true. That's a good point.
Also, because that's two-sided. She might not want Cersei manipulating the king, right?
Good point. Okay, so let's talk about the Iron Islands. This is a brief scene, but it's thematically very much in line with the rest of the episode. The Theon's weakness, the strength of Yara, and the reunion as well, which is a big theme of the episode, and a little bit of compromise and a little bit of mistrust that's kind of resolved. He shows up and she's immediately suspicious. Not only is she suspicious, it's a mixture of suspicion and contempt because he's so weak now. He's blubbery and he's, not the man he was, arguably not a man at all by some standards because he's lost, his quote unquote manhood. And he's just keeps his head down. He's apologizing a lot. He's mumbling. And Yara just kind of tries to look, be a Greyjoy, man. He's like, be who you are, but why are you here? Are you here? He's like, is it just coincidence that you showed up right after our father died? Which I think is funny because we know who did it. And we know that guy, it's Euron, says that he intends to take over. So he's the one who seems to be good. He'll probably be the one to show up at the Randfly. It's like, you've been gone for all this time. Where did you come from? You know, so she's accusing Theon of what her uncle is really guilty of. So that's kind of a funny little misdirection there. What did you think of the scene overall, and what did you get from it?
I liked it. I thought it was interesting. It's the Greyjoys, we haven't got a lot from them, and they're characters who I'm kind of conflicted about how I should feel about them in the first place. But it's intriguing, if nothing else. I'm going way back to when Theon was being tortured. I just didn't like that segment. It's something that's hard for me to really relate to or understand or predict. I don't know what comes of a person when they're tortured that severely and seemingly without any real like motivation or end goal or something.
Just because he likes to torture people.
Like what happens? Really... yeah, like there's a certain idea like that a tough character, a strong character, someone more fortitude, someone like Ned or whoever, they would stand up to that. So like, no, there's just a certain level, like Ramsay specifically, what we saw is like, it's not a thing a person could stand up to. You know, it doesn't matter how strong or tough or whatever, you just lose who you are. As far as I could tell, that seemed to be. Now, it's not like Theon was particularly this tough person you can't break in the first place.
He was already sort of,
he was kind of this punk kid or whatever.
Identity issues.
But I don't, right, it's hard for me to judge Theon for being broken by Ramsay because I think any character would have been.
Yeah, people would be broken in different ways. But basically broken.
And remember that Ramsay was using every different way. You know what I mean? Like he
psychological
lured him
torture,
out, thought he was being rescued, brought him back.
And that did show that there was a point. But it wasn't just torture; it was to make him a servant. It was to make him servile.
Yeah, to completely remove.
And we learned that because Bruce was like, "You're playing your games." He's like, "No, this wasn't a game." He's like, "Look, like he's shaving me. He's not taking revenge, even when I'm talking about his family like this right in this moment and talking about Rob that way." Yeah, so. I agree with you. Like I didn't like seeing those scenes, but
my point is that it's hard for me to relate to his character. I remember the time when I had my cock chopped off and I had to go face my sister. And I don't know.
It's similar to John. Like we don't know what John is facing. Like who knows what it's like to be murdered? You know.
The thing is, I still feel like it's even more extreme. You know what I mean? Yeah. For one, we've just gotten more of John's character. We've gotten deeper into his character than Theon's.
Plus, that's a realistic thing. Like there are people in the real world who have survived torture. No one has ever come back from being murdered.
Yeah. Theon is also what he's supposed to do is tougher to figure out. Like other characters like John, we sort of expect him to do the right thing, right? But what the right thing is for Theon is hard to know. Like even when I'm going to say, his big mess up when he abandoned Rob. Right, which a lot of that is easier in hindsight to judge, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it seems worse because of the personal connection he had to the people at Winterfell. But any other conqueror in Winterfell would have killed those boys and chopped off the head of whoever confronted him. That Theon was doing, on a certain level, what he's supposed to do.
Pretty normal, right? Yeah.
Danny chopped off that dude's head in front of a crowd. We're like, Danny, why did you do that? Seemed like such a mistake. But she felt like it's what, I don't think people were like, Danny's just like Theon. I'm not sure. But I get this vibe that people don't like Theon. There's a million reasons not to. But I try to see all the sides of it. And it's hard for Theon to know what's right, who he's supposed to be loyal to, what he's supposed to do. It's hard to equate to a character who's been so tortured. And it's so what seems like is being expected from Yara here is
so there's a pause before you say her name. It's Yara
is be a Greyjoy and man up or whatever, but so that you can be a pirate and go rape and pillage. What am I rooting for here? I don't want him to be. I don't think the Greyjoys are good either. You know what I mean? I don't want him to do this. You know what I'm saying? So I have to kind of appreciate the interestingness, the intrigue of these characters and this plot line and this faction in the world. But I don't know, fundamentally, I have a hard time relating to them or rooting for them. So I feel like I'm kind of being negative, but I still think this is cool. I still think it's interesting. I'm intrigued by the drama.
I think it's fine to, I don't think it's negative because I think most people agree. You don't root for the Greyjoys because you like what they're all about. For me, I just I have my Greyjoy mug because I love the sigil. I just think the Kraken is cool, and in particular, I'm not going to delve into book talk here, but like how they're written too. They're interesting. Not that you root for them. I don't think that. But they're all like, there's a lot of scumminess there, more so than elsewhere. But they're well written and they're interesting, and that makes them fun in their own way. And yeah, it's hard. They haven't been a big part of the story, and it seems like that's getting bumped up a notch this season, but it's still in the early phases. And we have a bit to discuss with them at the end of the episode, because there's some they do appear in the next on. So we'll be talking about them at the end, a little more at the end of the episode. And so I think with that, it's time to move on to the next area. I think it's about time for us to go fully west. We'll start with Tyrion and Missandei and Grey Worm and all that good stuff. We've been kind of talking about this scene off and on before we even got into it, because of how much some of these plots are tied to each other so much. And a lot of those things a lot of the themes of the episode were kind of explained in this scene, with the conflict, the compromising, the doing what you have to do, swallowing things you don't want to do in order for the greater good, but maybe being wrong about that. All these different things, a lot of these kind of come together. This is the scene that really kind of explains these subtexts, I think. And it's done quickly, which is kind of a good thing. It's not, sometimes I think they rush things in the show a bit, but that's kind of the nature of the medium. And I think that this was properly paced. I think in general, this episode had good pacing, I think, although the last scene was like, woo, that was fast. But
I think this episode was a little longer than the last two episodes.
Was it? Okay. Yeah. I didn't really notice that.
I think it was 57 minutes instead of 52 or whatever.
Okay. Good job. Good job. Always good to have those few extra minutes in there, because they can do a lot in a few minutes.
Yeah, definitely.
We've seen that. So, yeah, I mean, like that whole Ironborn scene was probably only a couple minutes. That's the difference between 52 and 57 is the scene with Theon and Asha, probably. That may have even been only 3 minutes. A lot. They can pack a lot in those 3 minutes.
You say a lot of words in a short amount of time.
It's true. Like we're saying in this episode of our own. So let's talk about that. Let's see. So Tyrion, it's basically pragmatism versus idealism. That's a good way to put it. And that's I don't know if this is one of the things you thought about, but it's kind of one of the things that's playing out in American politics right now, quite a lot, especially on the Democratic side. But we won't get into that can of worms. No, thank you. But it is certainly a theme, is people talking about pragmatism versus idealism, and this was on display here. And it's hard to say who's right. I think Tyrion is, he's got a point. You can't just expect to just make these people stop being slavers overnight. You can't. That's just not realistic. On the other hand, you can't give them an inch, because they'll take a mile. They really are not just going to go down fighting. They will go down fighting. You give them this peace, and they'll probably just use it to work against you. They'll probably try to send assassins or something. Who knows what moves they'll make? But it's not, from Grey Worm and Missandei's point of view, they're not just going to go along with this and be like, yeah, okay, we'll dismantle all our slaving. Yeah. They're going to maybe make it seem they're going to do that, or they're going to maybe bide their time and hope they can get away with this and that. 7 years is a long time. They'll drag their feet. Like, do they really think Dany's even going to still be there in 7 years? They'll be like, look, all we do is wait this out. Like, let's pretend we're dismantling all this stuff. They're going to leave. And then we'll just go back doing whatever we want. So I think that's the kind of thing that Grey Worm is thinking, and Missandei. And they got a good point. Like, you can't trust them.
On top of all that, what leverage does Tyrion have? This is just a request that he's making. He can offer up some horses or whatever, but in the end, maybe
I won't send the Unsullied against you. I mean,
or the dragons, but they don't believe in that as a threat at the moment.
Not yet. Yeah, he has to. That all may be moot, because if Dany comes back with this giganto Khalasar, mega Khalasar, well, she's got all the manpower she needs to make these slave cities do whatever she wants.
Now, here's a problem with that, though.
There won't need to be compromises.
The thing is, I had the thought, I can't remember for sure if I said it in the last episode, but I definitely, through the week, it was just becoming clear in my mind that this is where her army's coming from. She's going to unite these calls.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't exactly unite. She united them in fire. But regardless, end result is she's got her army.
Yeah, hostile takeover of all Khalasars.
The thing that made me suspicious of if it's that made a lot of sense on one level, but on another level, it's like, that won't work, because what do these guys do? You tell me, you're a little more expert from the books, right? What's the primary activity of this horde of Dothraki?
Well, yeah, they kill and loot and sell slaves. I don't know if it's primary, but it's part of their primary activity, which is,
fundamental, we'll say, maybe this is enough for them to abandon that whole thing. But their society is still on some level built around that. just like these cities are. It just doesn't work. However much you want it, however morally correct it is, when you have a system established a certain way and you suddenly have an upheaval, there's going to be problems with that. And I'm sort of supposing that even if they have a willingness to just stop all slave trade, their total culture just is willing to change overnight, there's going to be some pragmatic issues with it. Some of this labor is dependent on to gather food and water and et cetera, et cetera. And I just don't know how realistic it is for her to take this huge culture of people, dismantle their economic system, and then overthrow other cities with it. You know what I mean? I don't know how realistic it is for this to play out.
That's a good question to raise. And I actually addressed this in the book show last week because I had some similar questions. So I won't completely go over all that again. But I will say that Dany is basically, at this point, proven that she is the stallion who mounts the world, not her dead unborn son. She is the one kind of doing the things of that prophecy. She's fulfilling that prophecy. And if the Dothraki recognize her as that, as like the savior, as like the avatar of their religion, if she wants them to stop slaving, they'll do it. I mean, it won't be easy, like you said. It won't just be an automatic thing. But this is like an otherworldly being that's prophesized, giving them commands. Like if she can get them to follow her, she's a woman. They never follow a woman. She's already broken through that. Presumably, we haven't seen it yet, but they bowed to her, so it seems like that's happened. If she can get them, she already got Khal Drogo kind of indirectly to vow to cross the water. No Dothraki had ever done that before either. These are all, and those were religious things. Those were like superstitions, religion. The slaving thing is part of their economy. It's part of their tradition, but it's not a religious thing. It's not like it's pragmatism. It's like, well, we don't kill the slavers because that's who we sell stuff to.
What you're saying makes
basically
a lot
religion
of sense.
Trumps tradition.
Yeah, I can see if they are recognizing her as the Messiah. Yeah, that may be enough.
That's a big trump card.
Now, there's still some. It's a big trump card, but there's still a few issues.
Sure.
For example, imagine in the real world, if Jesus came out of the sky, if like the clouds parted and CNN reporters are there with cameras and everyone's looking at the TV and Jesus comes down from the cloud and says, "I have returned and I want the government to stop collecting taxes." It'd be hard for us to deny the reality of the Savior returning, but it's still going to be a problem. Taxes are paying for Medicare and the road construction. Like, this is going to take a minute. You know what I mean?
Well, Jesus, what do we do instead? You got another alternative? He's like, nah, just stop doing that. Like,
and what if he said something what if he said, now I want to remind everybody, adultery is a sin.
Like
shit. Of all the people everywhere, and even if Jesus comes out of the sky, I still think some people still won't believe, or won't reject, or won't be strong enough. Some people are still going to commit adultery.
It's a completely unprecedented kind of thing. Like, how do you react to the savior of your religion appearing before you? In this case, they bow apparently, but after that, it gets more complicated.
But they're talking about thousands of people are going to be following her.
Yeah,
tens of thousands of people.
Right? For 100,000,
including some people who have been absorbed from other cultures. And are they all going to completely buy into, agree, and be able to operate? Not just not starve, organize as an army and conquer multiple cities.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This isn't something that's going to happen in a line of dialogue 2 episodes later. This is like a whole nother show. This is like 8 more books. I don't know how this is going to happen.
You wonder how they're going to resolve this. It feels it will probably be a little rushed because that's just that's somewhat standard for them. But hopefully they'll do it in a way that at least we can kind of extrapolate the reasoning behind it. We say, okay, well, if you take what they said here and then take that a little further, then that means this was also said and this was all. It kind of works. So we'll have to hope they handle it well. So let's go and move on to that. We've kind of talked that we've been going back and forth between Meereen and Dany and all this because it all just ties well together so much. And so let's talk about Jorah and Daario a little more. There's not a whole lot to say with Jorah and Daario. They kind of did what we thought they would. It wasn't quite the way we thought it would happen. We got a nice, cool overhead shot of Vaes Dothrak. That was pretty cool. And we got them jawing back and forth like they do. And the grayscale reveal. That was interesting. Daario sees it. He didn't freak out. He's like, you know what happens? He's like, yeah, I know what happens.
Yeah. I thought that's a pretty powerful moment there. I think that I almost wish that, I don't know how they could have done it, but I felt in that moment, I was kind of putting myself in Jorah's shoes. I was kind of like recognizing the suffering he's facing, that he's soldiering through it, the pain he knows is coming, the horror of it, whatever, and he's being tough about it, if you will. I don't know. I think that was like a.
Did you have any? You didn't get any discipline as a child, did you?
No,
none.
Yeah,
that was great. Yeah. Good stuff there. And the actual sneaking into town, that is what it is. It's kind of pretty standard action stuff. And them finding Dany, that was really cool. Like the way that all goes down, you really didn't expect it to go that way. I thought it was pretty clever too, the way Dany kind of glommed onto the younger Lazarine Khaleesi and was like, I can make a friend of this one, because she hasn't been there very long. She's young. She didn't have a full life. She's probably got some things in common with Dany. And it also was really well done because of how little they had to do to tell you a lot. Like they showed, like when they're talking to each other, the Lazarine Khaleesi says, "Is it true that you have dragons?" Which tells us that everyone knows this about her. That's why when the big moment happens, they already know she's this mother of dragons. So they kind of already know this, like, wow, she's been captured. She's a slave.
There's at least a buzz about.
Right. And she looks so unique too, compared to everyone else around. So that she's very noticeable. And so they're like, oh wow, they captured her. And then all of a sudden she killed all the calls. Like, holy crap, she really is special. And then she walks out of the flames. Like, I can believe them. Like, some people had an issue with them just bowing to her like that. But upon reflection, I didn't have any problem with it at all, because it's just so amazing and epic. Like, she kills all the calls in a society where strength rules. She kills all the leaders, and she's just this unarmed woman, and they already they already have a very sexist culture, very patriarchal culture that doesn't give much, much to women at all. They don't have the ability to rule, really. The only position of honor they have is this Dosh Khaleen, which is, Dany says, well, it's more than some people have, about how they at least they take their advice. But still, it's not much. It's compared to what the men get in this society. It's pretty paltry. So it's just, you got to put yourself in the shoes of a Dothraki, or the moccasins, or whatever they wear. This is what she's done is incredible. It is godlike. She's survived the flame. It's beyond just like sorcery and witchcraft. It goes beyond that, because this is not, it's just because it's just so spectacular. And she doesn't have the reputation of being like some sort of sorceress. She's some sort of semi-divine being, who birthed dragons, and they already knew that. So when they see her they know she's birthed dragons, this like confirms it all. This is like, well, maybe that was a rumor. Maybe she doesn't really have dragons. Maybe that's just something the story is. It's like, whoa, she just walked out of the flames. Like, that didn't kill her. It didn't even burn her. Like, her hair isn't even burned. Like, whoa. So in a society that respects strength, this is, I think, an appropriate reaction. That, like, strength above all. It's not just they respect strength. Strength is everything,
Yeah, I think it's an appropriate reaction. I can see an argument for, on one hand, they're a society that respects strength, but on the other hand, they're a society that fears magic or whatever. And once again, with that many people, it seems like maybe one guy in the back room, like, I'm not bowing to her.
Yeah, there might be a few of those, but they're the.
And that's kind of what I would expect if they were going to hash the story out. That there would be some sub factions, that she would still need some diplomacy, and that Tyrion will make the peace, or Jorah, or whoever, It
was clever camera work there. They showed the two Dosh Khaleen, the two ones that had lines. The older one who was kind of friendly to Dany, and the young one that helped her with her plot. And they also showed a few warriors. Like, they made sure it wasn't just like random people. It wasn't just like guys, like wearing rags. There was like a couple of dudes in the full like regalia, and they were bowing too. So you got to see like a full, like a subset, a sampling of all the different people that were there in the crowd. So that was clever. Unlike some of the other crowd scenes where they just had a mishmash of people, I think they threw a little nuance in there, and I thought that was nice. I appreciated that. And speaking of the Lazarine Khaleesi, there's just, in terms of the logistics of how that played out, I think what we're meant to think is that Jorah and Daario may have been the ones to like put some oil inside the Dosh Khaleen hut thing, but I think it was the Lazarine Khaleesi. I think that makes more sense, and because she's like, no, don't kill her. First of all, good thing it wasn't Jorah that grabbed her from behind, because that's grayscale arm. But he's like, trust me, don't betray me. Got her help too. I think that was part of it. I think because she would be able to walk in there no problem, and no one would think, who are those two guys going in there? She can go in and out, no problem. So all they had to do was wait till everyone was inside, kill the guards and bar the door. That's a little easier because they, you know, it's not like them going in and moving around and spreading oil or whatever. Pretty sure there had to be some oil spread around the way things went up so quickly. But it also is a straw hut. Like the ceiling was made of straw.
Yeah.
So like the fact that it went up quickly, maybe it was a little over the top, but if you can imagine that there was oil spread around, it makes some sense. Also, I like how it was done. There was some. We're talking about the actual moment of the big reveal, Dany doing her, you know, killing everyone. And it was like Khal Moro. First of all, Khal Moro apparently is one of the stronger calls because he was kind of like holding court there. The others were kind of deferring to him. And that makes sense. The strongest call would be kind of, you know, the one with the largest Khalasar would be the one that like gets to kind of be in the middle there. And he starts to get a little frustrated because it's like in the first time we see him, he's kind of like laughs it off. He's like, she's kind of tough, you know, but then he gets kind of mad. He's like, she just will not be scared. Why is she not afraid of us? Why is she just like not intimidated? It's like, he's like, you crazy, see, you know, he's like stands up to her and she's like, still isn't afraid. And because she knows it's and she puts her hand on the metal and this camera pans past and some of the shots are like, whoa, what? How is she doing that? And it kind of, they're already a little stunned because this little woman is just like talking down to them. And they're like, so they don't know what to make of that. They're they respect strength. So they're like, well, she's clearly brave. She's facing us and doing this. But she's also, you know, they also have contempt for her. And so they underestimated her, just like the theme of this episode. And there's a little pause. She pushes the flame over and they back off. But then some of them start to rush her. But the other Brazier is just right there. She shoves that down and it blocks the ones who are coming at her. And I liked the scene more the second time because at first it was just so over the top. I was like, whoa, how did I felt like some of the details had to be wrong given everything. Yeah. But upon reflection, it all worked for me. Yeah,
I also, the first time I watched it, thought in my mind, like, this is silly, whatever. The point is she burned them all alive. That's kind of how I chalked it up. But I went back and watched the second time, especially considering the idea that the younger widow had set things up, you know, because it seemed to me like when the brazier hit the ground, that fire kind of like spilled out across
really
the floor.
Flew across.
And so I thought that maybe there was like a pool of oil in it that spilled out and spilled. I didn't even think what you said, that maybe it was like coated on the floor or something like that. So, but especially if you consider that there was some other amount of preparation or sabotage involved, and again, watching the angle, like she pushes the first one down, and they generally scatter, but a couple do rush her, but then she pushes the other one down toward them. Then they go around the back, and at that point, it makes as much sense to get out of the building as it does to rush her.
Yeah.
And they do. They try to get out of the building, and the door's locked, and then she pushes the other ones down, and they can't even get at her anymore. And if they did, it wouldn't matter as much as getting out of the building still, et cetera, et cetera. So
she was basically in the eye of the storm. Like it was hard to approach. Like at first they had a shot at her, but she was too, you know, like she's standing right next to both Braziers. They're both in like arm's reach, so it wasn't a stretch. It was only a small stretch for her to reach across and tip another one over, and very intimidating when they see her and they're like, "Whoa, she's just like not being burned. What the heck is going on here?" So it was an appropriate like astonishment, and that little hesitation is all she needed to do the deed.
I feel like we're sort of coming toward the end of talking about Dany, but I wasn't done talking about Tyrion.
Sure, we can go back and talk about Tyrion. Yeah, this is all kind of goes together. This episode has been hard to stay focused on because of the way things all relate to each other so much.
I want to say how much I liked those scenes, from the dialogue to the acting to the thematic elements, with the first meeting with the slavers, then meeting with the former slaves, and Grey Worm's reaction to like, you know, don't use me in your
this is
political trickery here.
This is as emotional and angry as we've seen Grey Worm and Missandei.
Yeah. And understandably, because you can kind of see that Tyrion, again, coming from wealth and having dealt with these types of people before, this is old hat to him. It's like, I know what to do. Give them some whores, offer them some money, let them say what they need to say to save face. You know, what did they say?
You got to stroke their ego. That's so important to these.
We're not supporting the Harpies. I know you're not, but also don't support the Harpies. I'll play your game. Sure, you're not supporting the Harpies, but don't support the Harpies. You know, it's so different from, and in fact, I was realizing this is the most I've enjoyed Essos.
Oh yeah,
scenes with Tyrion, and I don't know how much is to give credit to Tyrion or Peter Dinklage, or maybe the idea that we have someone of a different standpoint, if you will. Here, everyone else before has been like a bunch of Ned Starks, right? Everyone's like, let's do the right thing. Let's do the right thing, everybody. Let's do the I agree. We should do the right thing. We should do the right thing on Sunday. Right thing, yes. Grey Worm, right thing, yes. Embarrassment, yes. Right thing, right thing, right thing. Now we have Tyrion saying, you guys have been trying this right thing for a minute. It's not really working. Maybe you should like try the realistic thing one time. We can kind of work the right thing in with the reality that we have to deal with and compromise, maybe, you know. And
but you get the same sense as like from a Sunday and Grey Worm. They're like, how long were you? Like, you know what it's like? He's like, yeah, I was a slave for a few days. Like, that doesn't teach you anything, man. I mean, you can get like a slightest hint of how horrible it is, but man, try living through that for years. Try being made into a eunuch. Try being, you know, a sex slave. You know, that's really something.
One of our friends watching it with us was reminded of the scene from Zoolander when Derek went to work in the coal mines. Like, I think I'm getting the black lung. You've been down there for one day, Derek.
Okay, another quick break. We'll be back. We'll probably have some more about Marine. And we didn't really talk about we briefly touched on the scene with Osha and Ramsay. We'll talk about that a little more. Then we'll move on to our credits and our discussion for episode 5, as well as some things that weren't in this episode. As always, it's important to talk about what was in the episode, but what wasn't in the episode is always very interesting as well. So right back after this. Yeah, so do you have any more thoughts on Marine and on Tyrion and Dany? This really, we could just go on all day about that scene. There was I agree. Like some people have said, I've heard from some people, including our friends, and then sometimes I agree with them, that in some spots the dialogue is occasionally weaker, and that's sometimes blamed on the fact that they aren't pulling it from the books anymore. They don't have book dialogue to draw on anymore. I didn't fully agree with that. Sometimes I see where people are coming from with that. But like you said, the dialogue in this episode was very strong. Yeah. Very strong. One of the strongest dialogue episodes they've had. Maybe the strongest show-only dialogue, because there's almost none of this was drawn from the books. I think I could say that without being spoilery. This is, we're past the books for the most part with these plot lines, so it couldn't come from the books. In some cases it could, because they can always pull things back. There's lines from this season that happened in book 1, for example, and I'm sure there'll be kind of some vice versa, different combinations of that. But yeah, really, they're doing a really good job with the dialogue in general this year. And like you said, you're more keyed in on these things than I am, but the camera work and some of the shots they're doing are pretty creative and very, in their work to give us more to talk about, more to think about. And it's a thing, with the visual medium, picture's worth 1,000 words. That's part of why we can spend so much time talking about these episodes. It's not just the pictures; it's the dialogue and the predictions, the music. There's so much to say. So, yeah, good time. So, what else did you have on anything else there, or should we move on?
Well, I do want to think a little bit about one of my thoughts there is how this is going to play out, because on a certain level, especially if you ignore, like if you could somehow watch those scenes and not see the facial expressions of Missandei or Grey Worm, it seems like Tyrion's tearing it up. It seems like he's got it all under control. But we are shown the expressions of Grey Worm.
Grey Worm's like his jaw is like,
and
he's like,
there's at best
Missandei looks distressed.
Suspicion and dissatisfaction that maybe in the long run they'll come around and see that it's all worth it. But one thing we know, almost impossible, they're not going to show us 7 years. We're not going to see the 7-year plan play out. So is it not going to play out because some more drastic measure is going to be taken, or is it not going to play out because it's going to move? Dany's just going to go to Westeros anyway. I'm not sure, but however it plays out, on what level will Tyrion maybe like revert back to be more idealistic and realize these guys can't be trusted and we should have killed them in war? Is that, I still appreciate Tyrion's like, look, what do you? Yeah, I agree. Slavery's awesome. Instead, we should kill everyone. Like there's two bad things here, and trying to compromise between them.
Well, they from their perspective, Missandei and Grey Worm, they have been following a leader who is uncompromising and idealistic. So in comes someone who they don't even know that well, who is like trying to do it maybe what we would, from an outside perspective, consider a bit more pragmatic. But they don't know that. You know, they don't know that. They grew up as slaves. They don't really, they never had a chance to really develop a worldview that incorporates lots of different ways of thinking, because they've been shuttered from that world there. And now this has all kind of been exposed to them all at once. Yet the person who freed them from it shares their values and the uncompromising, like idealistic, like, no, we're going to end slavery. There is no, and Dany was starting to learn the problems with that. So you think that maybe when she comes back, if she doesn't just stomp over everyone because she got a gigantic Khalasar, she might, you know, be like, yeah, well, I was starting to see this, because like with the slave that was like, hey, what do I do now? Like, I had a position of honor. Like, I was a teacher. Now I've got nothing, you know? And that was like, Dany was like, huh, I never thought of that. That's the kind of thing Tyrion would think of.
Yeah.
And that's why she needs him, because he thinks of those kind of things. But with that, but it's also important to not compromise too much, you know, and I really do wait to see. I really wonder how Dany's going to react to what Tyrion has done, and maybe she'll be like, "Yeah, well, this is the best you could do, but now I've got a lot more military might. We have a lot more leeway or leverage." Maybe she'll congratulate him for doing the best he could with what he had. I don't know.
Even if she was upset with him on some level, I don't think she's going to like chop his head off. You know?
Yeah.
I appreciate that Missandei and Grey Worm still supported Tyrion. They were upset about it, but they waited till they were alone to express their concerns. They were able to come up with some politically correct lines to keep the peace in the moment of contention.
Yeah, you don't. And, they know not to be contentious with each other in front of the other side. You present a unified front, argue about it behind the scenes. Yeah. So they're on top of that, at least. That's really smart. You don't like it was with Barristan, I believe, when he was like, don't do this with the dragons or whatever. Don't sell a dragon, you know, or Jorah was like, don't do this.
Yeah.
Like, well, the time for this is bad. You needed to, if you wanted to argue with me, not in front of the enemy, you know?
I thought it was interesting how Grey Worm got the last word. I wonder what kind of foreshadowing was there, if any. You know, it seemed like
Tyrion was foreshadowing, but I'm not sure. Yeah,
making his point, and they were still upset about it. And he was. It was like there's this back and forth between his logical points and their emotional concerns. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's when it seemed like Tyrion had made all his logical arguments, Grey Worm still got like, no, they're going to use you. You know, like I wonder if Grey Worm's naive, or Grey Worm's underestimating Tyrion, or is Tyrion naive? Is Tyrion underestimating them?
Maybe a little from column A, a little from column B. I think Tyrion is. He knows he can't say anything more. He's not going to. There's no point in arguing at that point. He's just like, well, I'm just going to have to convince them. I'm just going to have to show them. I'm going to show them that this works, and then maybe they'll believe me.
I have to get them drunk,
which they just don't want to do. They don't like drinking. Damn it. So he doesn't have that option. Okay, so do you have any more on this? We could talk about Winterfell real quick, and then we can move on to our credits and post discussion.
Well, I wanted to talk about something that was maybe a little more broad.
Okay, sure.
I've heard a few times a reference of the prince that was promised and some sort of a prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how much of that is just me hearing conversations or what because I'm into the second book now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such a blur with what's in the show.
And, it's hard to keep both cannons straight. Yeah.
But I think is there not some that this Melisandre, it's like this, she's following some sort of prophecy. Is this some vision she had, or is this a prophecy that everyone knows or kind of knows about that she's particularly in tune with? And how much of that should we know about in the show? Can I ask you about this without spoiling
I think I can dance around it without being too specific from what's in the books. It's definitely a belief of that religion that there is a prophet that there is a savior that's going to come. Just like the Dothraki have that, the stallion who mounts the world. It's kind of like there's a kind of a parallel savior thing going on from multiple different religions, and they each have their own version. They're all it's like kind of how each culture has its own version of the flood myth in the real world, which indicates that there probably was some sort of real flood, which is why so many different cultures have a story to go with it, because on some level it's probably true. So in this case, the prince that was promised, it's supposed to be the one the hero that's rising to fight the oncoming darkness. And so that's why Melisandre was like, well, Stannis is the one that's going to stop the White Walkers. Now she thinks it's Jon. And well, I don't know if she's right. It seems seems like a better bet than Stannis, but
is there more to? Is it this vague story, or is it like a poetic 5-line prophecy? Is it something that you could key aspects to it that you could name?
Basically,
like, was the comment part of it?
The comment was a bit part of it, yeah. Basically, if you go back to season 2 and you hear what Melisandre is saying in that first scene, not the scene where the Maester tries to kill her, but the scene where they're burning the 7 gods. I guess that's actually the first scene, and then the other one comes after. I don't know, whatever order they're in, where she's burning the gods and burns the Florent man as well. And that's what when she brings Lightbringer, the sword that she's calling Lightbringer, out of the fire and gives it to Stannis and all that. She basically reads the prophecy out loud at that point. Okay. And it's something along the line. I shouldn't say it exactly because I'm not sure how they've changed it. I can't remember how they changed it from the show to book, but it's basically saying that when the Red Star bleeds, the prince that was promised, also called Azor Ahai, which may or may not be the same person, different version of the same myth or legend perhaps, will be reborn to do things. I won't say more. I don't remember exactly what's in the show version of that, but it is sort of spelled out. So folks, if you're going to look, I highly recommend looking up in the Game of Thrones wiki. You'll get the full story. Just look up the prince that was promised. You get the full story from what we know as a show point of view. I definitely don't want to go too far and explain things that are book only canon. And like Sean says, it is hard to keep track of which is which. So, but yes, it is established. It's been brought up several times in the show. It is a bit vague, for sure, but that is how it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to have clear answers on magical prophecies and how they resolve in the world.
Maybe not clear answers, but it's just occurred to me how much I enjoy thinking about where things are going, and I don't think I'm alone in this. I think a lot of people watching Game of Thrones speculate. A big joy and value and social aspect of this show is speculating on where it's going.
Yes.
And I feel like that prophecy holds a bunch of clues. And I feel like I should read up. I should remember or rewatch that scene. I should be more in tune with those clues. I kind of want to rewatch the scene when Dany went through that Hall of Visions or Hall of Illusions.
House of Undying. Yeah,
House of Undying. Yeah. I bet there might be some more meaning to some of those scenes if we were to watch them again at this point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's quite a lot that happens in that equivalent scene in the book too. There's a lot going on there. And they couldn't, because of the difficulty in that type of medium translating visions to the screen, there's a lot they had to leave out. But they also added some things, so it's kind of cool. So it was fun seeing that on the screen and trying to analyze the differences. We're doing show reviews back then though, so we can't say, hey, go back and listen to our review of episode 3, season 2. I don't know. We didn't start this that long ago. We were only doing book stuff back then. So yeah, that's really interesting. The whole concept of this prophecy and how this is an underlying theme that's been building up and getting we get little more hints of how it all works and what it's supposed to mean as we go on. And whether or not it's really Jon is a big open question. Seems Melisandre certainly convinced, but she was convinced before and was wrong. Jon certainly seems to check off more of the boxes based on what the prophecy is saying. Being brought back to life is something. But Beric was brought back to life. He wasn't the prince that was promised. I mean, probably not, and so
he wasn't as young and handsome though. That's the key.
But he did have a flaming sword. So that's a big open question. So I guess what we'll do, folks, is we'll look up. We'll do some research for next week's episode. We'll give a more thorough explanation of the prince that was promised prophecy for what it means to the show. Maybe we'll pull all the details together. Something we do a lot in our book review episodes. We pull together details from all over the place, try to connect the dots as much as possible. A lot of times when you connect all those dots, it becomes clear. Sometimes it becomes less clear. But in this case, it should be more clear because it's not very clear at all right now. And so I think we'll be able to help with that quite a bit. So look out for that next week. Also, speaking of next week, we're going to get this episode out a little bit earlier, and I don't mean we're going to publish it earlier. We're going to open it up so people can watch us while we're recording it. It'll be a live broadcast, which isn't much different than what we normally do. We just record these live straight to YouTube so they can be out as quickly as possible. But we'll open it up so you can watch while we're doing it. So a couple of you all can get in and be watching this a little ahead of time. So I know some of you all are sitting there hitting the refresh button, waiting for this episode to appear, waiting to hear our thoughts. So we thought we could speed it up just a little bit without sacrificing any quality. So that's so look out for that next week. We'll be posting an invite to that. And we'll probably do it a few other weeks this season as well. We figure the halfway point's a good time to do that. We're going to do a Q&A at some point as well. Open it up for questions. That time will be TBA. We'll probably wait till just after the halfway point to do that. And that probably won't be on a Monday either. So stay tuned for more details on future episodes outside of our normal schema. All right, let me do our... Well, no, we didn't talk about Winterfell yet. Let's talk about Bolton and Osha real quick. There's not a whole lot to say there.
Oh, yeah.
But we didn't cover that specifically. So we'll do that, and then we'll come back for our discussion on what we've learned about episode 5 so far. Yeah, I see. So that did seem like a setup. Ramsay kind of tricked Osha. Osha comes in thinking that he wants to sleep with her because she's like she says, well, I know what men want, especially when they have me bathed first. Yeah. And so, but it was sport for him. He knew that she was going to try to do something and he was ready for it. And so it was like a thrill. It was like an adrenaline rush for him. He's like, I'm going to let her almost kill me, but I'm going to kill her first. And that's just more of the same of Ramsay. That's just kind of Ramsay in a nutshell. You know, he's a sociopath who gets thrills from danger and from hurting people and killing people. And it was too bad that Osha didn't have a bigger role coming back. Kind of looking forward to her. I liked her character. I liked the way she talks. Like Ramsay says, I like how you talk well, and it was true. She was a good talker there. She wasn't afraid. I loved how she brought up the Fens. Like, do you eat them afterwards? And he's like, no. his facial acting was great in that scene. It was just like his reactions to her were hilarious. And she's like, yeah, well, then I've seen worse. It's like, nice. It was a bit like Danny standing up to the calls. They're just like threatening her, and she's just like, I'm not worried about it. But much different result.
Yeah, I was disappointed. Not in the show, but in the action. I liked her character. I didn't want her to die.
Yeah, kind of makes sense in retrospect that she just doesn't seem like she has much of a role to play. I mean, they could have given her a role to play, but
Yeah, it would have been. I don't think many people would have been disappointed if she had succeeded. It
would have been unexpectedly soon. Yeah. But yeah, it would have been like, whoa, that was not how we thought this would go.
But instead, things seem more dire for Rickon now.
Yeah, they do.
There's one less ally nearby, one less person for Ramsay to pick on instead of him. I'm sure he's next, right? You just imagine how this is going. Ramsay's like, bring me the girl.
Yeah.
Bring me the boy.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yep. What's next? Yeah, I think we're gonna maybe that'll be soon. Maybe we'll see that coming up soon. Who knows? Okay, it's time for our credits and acknowledgments, and once we get through that, we will be back with our spoilery chat for next week, episode 5 talk, the next on Game of Thrones. We did a little analysis of that, and we'll see what we can do. So if you don't want to be spoiled on that, see you all next week or on Wednesday if you tune in for our book to shows. So appreciate you sticking with us this season. We know we've been having a lot of fun, and it is sure to continue. So if you do want to hear our spoilery discussion for next week, well, we'll be right with you on that front. First of all, thanks to our Patreon supporters, such as First Lord Cash Craig, Hand of the King, Lord of Minds, Lord of Makers. My mispronunciations are just a part of the show nowadays. We never edit them out because, I don't know, they're funny. Anyway, you got to be able to make fun of yourself a little bit, right? Lord Jim, the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire blog, and Warden of the West is next on the list, followed by Lord George Stormsville, the cunning Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Lord John Reed of Castle Woodbridge is the Lord Borealis, the Light of the North and Warden of the North. Lady Kelly McMath of Covington, Lady of the Villa Hills and Crescent Springs and Warden of the South. Also, Rory the Rourg, Archer Extraordinaire and King Beyond the Wall, has been slowly conquering the lands beyond the wall. And with 2 episodes a week, that's a lot of conquering. So and since they were mentioned in this episode, just now by us, in fact, we'll say that Rory is busy with those cannibal femmes because, it doesn't seem like that would be an easy job, does it?
Cannibals keep you busy.
They do. Lord James Inkblade leads off our list of the Small Council, the Scholar Knight and Master of Whispers. They are in far less danger than the Small Council on the TV show. Lord Robert Jacobs is our Master of Coin. Rosie the Clever is our Master of Laws. Thanks for the letter recently, Rosie. Lord James Tuttle is our Master of Ships.
Now for our lords and ladies in their castles. Lady Direliz is of Castle Naki, and she's the alpha patron. Lord Dan of the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell is our breaker of the second stone. Lord Skip of the Veld is Lord of Castle Ganges. Cabethian Frozen is Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light. Mary Meg is Lady of the Bloody Stepstones. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Bread Fort. Alicia Everlasting of the Green Blood is Lady of Desert Rose. Jeffrey the Unflinching is Lord of Sand Lake. Lord Greybay is of the Queen City. Lord Ryan of Castle Stonegate is Guardian of the Rocky Mountain Pass. Lord Garin de Haviland is of Devil's Hand Keep. Lord Brandon Slate is the North's Hammer and Harbinger of the Old Gods. Lady Brame is Light of the Winter's Garden and Beacon of the Northwest. Lord Mark Joseph is the Snow in Winterfell. 2 new names we have here. Ashlyn Winter, the Hawk's Eye Lady of Castle Skyfall, and Lady Mikkel of Moonacre, leader of the Werewood Protectorate Alliance, the WPA for short. Great names there. Also, King's Justice Sir Troy the Steady is wielder of the Valyrian Steel Blade Fate. Whenever we need someone executed, we call on Sir Troy the Steady. Lord Commander Dubbington, the Red Bear, is head of our Kingsguard. And we also have our History of Westeros Night's Watch, commanded by Lord Commander George the Golden and assisted by First Ranger Fabian Flowers, the Bastard of Greenshield. If you want to get a title like that or support the show in another way, you can go to our website. There's a lot of ways to support the show. Patreon links are on the right, as well as links to Amazon.com, Audible.com, as well as PayPal. You can do a straight donation if Patreon isn't for you. You can shop through our Amazon links to support the show. Anything you buy there gets us a little kickback, so you can do your shopping at Amazon instead of some other place and pay no extra money. That's always nice. Audible trials work like this. Sign up, get 30 days for free, including a 1 free download. And I learned recently that their 3rd most popular title is Game of Thrones, Book 1. How about that? So a lot of people loving the audiobook experience of Game of Thrones. A great way to get through the book without having to sit down to read. I love sitting down to read, but I recognize that it's hard to find time to do that. So if you've got a commute or you've got chores, you got work you need to do around the house, you got exercise that needs doing, strap on those headphones, listen to Game of Thrones while you're doing it. I find that to be very enjoyable. A lot of you probably are doing that right now listening to this podcast, but you could also be doing it with the audiobooks. So check that out. History of Westeros. We've got all those things covered there. It's all very self-explanatory. historyofwesteros.com. All right, onward. Also thanks to Sean for joining me again. Always good. And thanks to Ashaya for our behind-the-scenes work as well. And we have our episodes on Wednesday for book readers. And we'll see you guys then if you're into that. But let's talk about the trailer for episode 5. There's some juicy stuff in there. We get Sansa confronting Littlefinger about, did you know about the Boltons?
Yeah.
And so we talked about that a bit, whether he did. I think he might have, and just kind of expected her to use that as leverage to say, hey, we need to go rescue her and get the Vale armies moving.
I think it'll be an interesting moment, but I don't think Sansa's going to get the truth from him. You know what I mean?
The truth from Littlefinger.
She's no faceless man.
I agree with you there.
It's not like Littlefinger hasn't thought about what he's going to say to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's prepared for this moment. He knows there's going to have a reunion.
I'm interested to hear what he has to say and how she responds to it.
Yeah, the way he lies is interesting.
I'm also interested who else is going to be in that room. Jon Snow will be there.
Yeah.
Davos be there. You know, I wonder who else will be present for that conversation.
And what room is that?
Yeah.
Is that the Night's
Wall? Are they going to go down to the Vale? Or
are they going to sail around, in ships to get up to the north? Or are they going to go up through the neck? It's really hard to say. They could easily just ferry across into, across this area here. If we're looking at the map here, they can just go from here to here, like this. They don't have to go up through the neck. There's a lot of possibilities. Probably kind of hard to see what I was doing there, but take a look at the map and you'll see what I mean.
I wish I had thrown this out during the main part of the episode and not this little bit, because I want so bad for someone out there. I want some art. I want to commission some art for Game of Thrones. I want Jon Snow dropping a mic. I want that, and I want the Littlefinger teleporter. Some kind of boat or carriage or something. Like kind of coming in. What's that game where you go through the portals? Man, it might even be called Portal or some kind of game. I think it's called Portal. Yeah. And I want there to be I don't know, King's Landing with the back end of a carriage entering a portal and the front end of a carriage coming out at the wall, or Winterfell or something.
I want a shirt that has just Gendry
just rowing,
Yes.
still rowing, with his arms getting massive from all
It could
that
be
rowing.
his sigil.
That's his house words. Still rowing. There's a big an oar and a large arm. This is crossed on a shield. Okay, so what else do we get from this? We also have what appears to be the King's Moot. Now, there's some interesting nuance in the scene. We have Asha. We have the old priest Aaron Damphair saying that's his book character name. We assume it's confirmed that this is the same character, but his name hasn't actually been said on the show. It's another uncle.
Which character?
The priest, the Ironborn priest.
Okay, all right.
And he's saying, "Who claims the Salt Throne?" And Asha is coming through. Euron, nowhere to be seen. So he's not standing there. And there's a separate shot of a whole ton of Ironborn ships. What look like Ironborn ships. But when you're seeing this scene of who claims, you can see the shoreline for a long way behind him. There's the sea is very visible, and there's no ships.
Yeah.
So it makes you think that someone's gonna some sort of, either the ships are just on the other side, and I'm just reading into this too much, or Euron's just gonna appear and be like, swoop in and be like, I'm taking over.
I should maybe take a closer
look. Coming in strong.
What I wondered when I showed those ships was if those were ships incoming or departing.
Absolutely.
Heading out on a mission.
They could have been heading out. You're absolutely right.
Yara's the king now, and we're going to go attack whatever.
Yeah, that is absolutely possible. I lean towards them coming, but it could be them. It could also just be them gathering. It could just be a shot, like to show the King's Moot is like everyone's there.
Yeah, that was the other thing.
Multiple possibilities.
In fact, I seem to remember there being talk of ships being gathered.
Yeah.
Maybe it was much farther in the timeline, but didn't at one point Baelon wasn't letting any ships depart to keep it secret that he was assembling his fleet, right? So I don't know. That seems like that was forever gone, and that can't still be the case.
Yeah, they already know he's already independent. They've already made his move. Yeah. But there's also, this is something this is on the list of things that we didn't get to talk about today because it wasn't in the episode. There was no follow-up to the Bran stuff. There was no continuing. There's no further talk about Jon's parentage. There's no more about Lyanna, at least not yet. But it doesn't even appear that we're going to get that next episode because the scenes of Bran are awesome. Yeah, but they don't seem to have anything to do with Jon or the Tower or any of that flashback for the Kingsguard. It doesn't seem to have related to that at all. What we do get is a very interesting shot that was on IMDb that was moved. It's not there anymore. Of 4 children of the forest sitting there, including Leaf, the one that we've seen, just sitting there crouching. And the background is leafy green. There's no snow. There's no winter. So it's like, what is he seeing? And if it's one of the children... Okay, in the books, the children live for a few hundred years. We don't know that that's the case in the show. They could be a lot more ancient beings. For example, the three-eyed raven, they've made him older too. So this could just be an extension of that. But he could be seeing the really distant past, or he could be seeing something more recent because of the age thing with Leaf. So it's really unclear. But either way, it's awesome. And he sees the Night's King, and he sees, I freeze framed that shot. There's a tree, a frozen tree surrounded by black stones. And then the zombie army is facing off, and Bran's in the middle of it, and then the Nice King appears, and it's like, whoa.
And you wonder if the Nice King is aware of Bran's presence at all.
And you think he is, because in that one trailer, he grabs Bran's arm. And then you have Mira shaking Bran, going, Bran, he's stuck in the vision or something. It's like, whoa, I cannot wait to see that. Okay, we're running short on time, so we can't really linger on that. Just get hype. That's really that's what I've got for you there. We see a scene with the Red Priest is talking to Tyrion and Varys, saying, "You know so much, but there's so much more that you don't know," or something along those lines.
Varys seemed almost in dread there.
Yeah, and we know Varys hates magic, so and they already encountered a Red Priestess in Volantis before they got separated, and she looked right at them, and they were creeped out there. So we're seeing the Red Priest besides Melisandre and finding what they believe, and seeing we're gonna see it's not just Melisandre isn't the only Red Priest. Well, we've also seen Thoros, but now we're going to see the religion of coming into it, the whole thing, and that stands in contrast to the religion of the Faith of the Seven that's becoming a big deal too. So we have these two worlds really building up. And again, we don't have time to stay in with that. So that's really it. That's all we had for the trailer that's coming on. So I think we'll end it here and look for you guys next week or on Wednesday if you're listening / watching to our Book to Show. So appreciate you all coming out to watch us today. We'll have news on what we're going to do next week and put up a link for
watching this episode live next week. So on behalf of Sean and all the rest of the History of Westeros team, thanks again, everybody. Valar Morghulis, Valar everything. Just Valar. We'll just leave it there. Valar pluribus unum. I'll have to come up with a different one every week. That's rough.
Uncommon Valar.
Okay, everybody. Thanks again. We will see you all next week. Get hype. Oh, we're not quite halfway through the season. Fun things still happening, and I can't wait to continue with you guys going through this season, having a lot of fun. Adios. Till next time.